Welcome to the NICKY OKOYE and thank you very much for subscribing and downloading our most unique and most powerful material till date, The Entrepreneur Advisor by Nicky Okoye. Entrepreneur Advisor is one of our series of exceptional, content-filled, empowering, and exhilarating podcasts, designed and produced for the 21st century entrepreneur and business executive wherever they may be on the globe. Dr. Nicky Okoye, our anchor, is a serial entrepreneur, experienced business executive, and a 30-year veteran of building businesses and funding projects. He has also advised heads of states, presidents, and heads of global conglomerates on 3 different continents of the world, including North America, Europe, and Africa. His efforts at leading a venture from startup conception stage to billion-dollar status in less than 18 months is legendary. The Entrepreneur Advisor podcast series provides our listeners with extensive insight into the latest 21st century strategies for business development, investment capital aggregation, and global market penetration. In addition, Nicky Okoye tackles the most pertinent issues while providing tactical insight as well as strategic solutions for building sustainable enterprises over the long term. Let's sit back and listen to Dr. Okoye. If you wish to engage Dr. Nicky directly, you can follow him at Nicky Okoye on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Again, that's NICKY OKOYE on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook.
Hello, and welcome to 2020 Nicky Okoye Podcast, and this is the Entrepreneur Advisor series. Thank you for downloading and thank you for subscribing to our podcast. Entrepreneur Advisor series is our answer to entrepreneurs and business executives all over the world. We are going to be engaging you in some of the most strategic areas of business development, helping you and supporting you to gain that competitive edge in the 21st century. We're going to be talking about capital. How do we access capital? What are the challenges? What are the strategies that we must use as executives or as entrepreneurs, as startup folks who just want to get an edge into that disruptive technology market, that great idea that you've just come up with. But remember that in order to access capital, you have to have a market access strategy or a market access plan. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to also talk about market penetration. How do you penetrate certain markets? Every single market across the world has its different peculiarities. The way you would penetrate a market in the United States is very different from how you would penetrate Europe, very different from how you're going to penetrate China, and extremely different from how you would penetrate Africa. So we're going to talk about that. Then we're going to talk about how you will look at business development. What are the strategies for business development that are best suited for your business? If you are starting a brand new technology company in the financial space, a fintech, your market penetration strategy or your business development strategy is going to be different from somebody who is doing a med tech application to supply or to penetrate the medical industry in a different market space or in a different geographical market space. All the strategies are different. And that's what we're going to be talking about in the Entrepreneur Advisor series. We're also going to talk about national environment. Now, every single environment, as I said, has its different peculiarities. So what are the peculiarities of the African environment? What are the peculiarities of the Asian environment? What is China looking like for a startup that wants to supply strategic services for the growing Chinese middle class? What is the national environment for South Africa? What is the national environment for Brazil? What do I need to know if I want to penetrate Brazil tomorrow with my newly developed products? Then we're going to talk about capacity. What kind of capacity do I need? If I'm hiring people for a global market, then I need global skills. But if I'm hiring people for a local market, then I need local skills. How do I get those local skills? And if I have local people already, how do I build their capacity. Then we're going to talk about business premises. What is the latest in business premises? What kind of workspace do I need for my new business or my existing business that needs the transformation? How are employees working from home these days, and how are employees working in the workspace? What is the difference? Is my business suited for work at home commute or a work at home strategy? Sometimes your business might not be suited for that, but some businesses are best suited for that. We'll talk about that. Then we'll talk about leadership. What kind of leadership is required in the 21st century? How do I decide on the kind of leadership my business needs in the 21st century? One of the greatest entrepreneurs of the 21st century is a guy called Jeff Bezos. I love that guy. He is the founder and currently the chief executive of Amazon. And he said this: there are two kinds of companies, those that work to try to charge more and those that work to try to charge less. We will be the second. Jeff Bezos is basically saying that he has a business model that is factored and strategically positioned to bring prices down. This quote reminds me of Sam Walton, the great founder of the Walmart stores. And you can see that these are two CEOs and two founders, two entrepreneurs from two separate generations. They're generations apart. Sam Walton took low prices every day as a business model and built one of the most successful business enterprises the world has seen, Walmart. He also became the richest man in the world. Then Jeff Bezos comes along, a whole generation later, adopts the same strategy, low prices, in a different environment, which is a 21st century environment. And what is a 21st century environment? It's an environment of technology and disruption. So it's the same strategic approach, low prices, but applied in two different environments, at two different generations, and after two different generational customers, if you will. And the incidental thing is that both strategies worked. Jeff Bezos, by the way, is also currently the richest man in the world. Go figure. So the Entrepreneur Advisor Series podcast will also look at market segmentation, penetration, and identification. So we're looking at it from a geographical standpoint. If you're living in Africa, working in Africa, doing business in Africa, we're going to look at Africa. But if you're in the United States, Europe, or Australia, then you want to do business in Africa, then you're going to want to listen to what we're talking about as far as the Africa penetration strategy is concerned. But we're also going to look at the United States. What is the entrepreneurship and the business environment there for startups? What is the environment saying about startups in specific industries? We will look at all that. We'll look at South America as well, because South America is very unique. There are a couple of countries in South America that are pushing the envelope and that are defining the South American business landscape. We will look at that. We'll look at Europe. So as much as the United States seems to be forging ahead as far as startup technology, the support for startups, support for entrepreneurs, most of the money that entrepreneurs are getting in the 21st century, the United States has created a very unique ecosystem that is supporting entrepreneurs and supporting startups. But what is happening in Europe? And we're going to look at Europe and figure out what is happening to entrepreneurs in Europe, what kind of market segmentation, penetration, and identification is going on there. And if you are based in Europe, how can you position yourself for the best the continent has to offer? Some parts of Europe are doing much better than others. If you look at the entrepreneurship environment in Germany, for instance, that is very different from what is happening in Belgium. and France may be a bit ahead of the curve. UK may be excitingly, positioning for specific segments of the entrepreneurship world in specific industries. We're going to look at all that. Then we'll look at Asia. China is simply on fire at the moment as far as entrepreneurship is concerned. There's a lot of capital, homegrown capital, formed in China that is making itself available for Chinese entrepreneurs. We have a look at that. What is going on in that space? What are the industries that are very exciting in China? We will also look at Australia and figure out, is Australia on the far side of the world physically and geographically, as well as in the business environment? We need to answer those kind of questions. Then we'll look at industries. Some of the industries are very exciting as far as entrepreneurship is concerned. So Entrepreneurship Advisor will look at media and entertainment. Media and entertainment is booming in the United States. It is booming in Europe. But you know what? It is also booming in Africa. In fact, in many African countries, the entertainment industry is the fastest growing industry till date. We need to examine what is going on in that industry and how do we position ourselves as entrepreneurs to take advantage of that. Then we'll look at technology. One of the areas that most entrepreneurs seem to be getting a lot of funding these days is what they call fintech, which is financial technology or technology for the financial markets. Payment systems are springing up left, right, and center. Collaborations, payments, schemes. Then we're now talking about tokens. Then we're now talking about cryptocurrency. All kinds of things are happening in the technology space. And then there's an extension of the technology space that is going into medical sciences. So you have medtech and medical applications that are boosting and expanding the medical industry. Then it is also extending into the educational industry. It is extending into the transportation industry with autonomous vehicles, with drones, driverless cars. Then you have technology extending even into security, defense, all kinds of industries. So we'll look at technology in its holistic form and how it's affecting several industries. We'll look at transportation, from the aviation to shipping to trucking. And we'll look at manufacturing. Specific industries in the manufacturing sector are very exciting. Pharmaceutical industry is exciting. The fast-moving consumer products, always an exciting industry to be in. The food and beverage manufacturing, we're always going to be eating, right? We're always going to be drinking. So those industries are very exciting. Of course, manufacturing has a specific arm called processing, which is part of the agricultural industry. So we'll look at agriculture from two sides. Agricultural processing, which is part of manufacturing, and then agriculture itself in terms of farming and the entire value chain of farming, which includes fertilizer, manufacture, and farming as a farm that needs to be implemented in specific zones to produce specific kinds of products. That value chain in farming also includes seed production, special varieties, pest-resistant seeds, and increased yields, varieties, and so on and so forth. Very exciting industry, but technology has come into that industry as well. We need to have a look at that. And then from real estate, we look at construction, we look at development. Real estate still seems to gain a huge amount of investment. And in Africa, for instance, some of the richest people in Africa seem to have made most of their money from real estate. There are two major industries that you have for Africa that is competing. You have the real estate and you have the oil and gas sector, where all the multi-billionaires are coming from. Technology is still growing in Africa, but that's not where the billionaires are coming from as of today. That will certainly be the case tomorrow. Then we'll look at finance and capital. How do we raise finance and capital? How is finance and capital affecting businesses from an entrepreneurship standpoint? And how is finance and capital being positioned in the 21st century? Then we're going to look at disruptive business models. Entrepreneur Advisor will look at those business models around the world that are disrupting industries. Some industries that exist today will not exist tomorrow because certain disruptive business models are taking root as we speak. Those disruptive business models are built on specific strategies. We're going to look at those strategies. Some of them are also built on specific operational procedures. We will look at that too. You might learn a thing or two from some of these disruptive business models because some of those models that have been implemented in countries that are way ahead of the curve, like the United States or Europe, they have not yet been implemented in places like South America or Africa. So there's a lot to learn from that standpoint. So if you're listening to our podcast, we will help you to get ahead of the curve. Then we'll look at raising capital. Raising capital can be very unique because raising capital can be divided into segments. If you're an entrepreneur, early stage capital can be extremely challenging. So you need to understand what it takes to raise early stage capital as an entrepreneur. But there are other segments of the business value chain that require capital. If you're a small or a medium-sized business and you're still trying to raise capital because you need to grow, Series A capital, B, and so on and so forth, we need to look at that. If you're an established business, there are chances that you still need to grow because you require additional capital for new plants, new production, or new technology that has just disrupted your industry. And then if you're a mature business and you still need capital, chances are it's time for you to go to the capital market. So we'll look at the capital markets as well. And then Entrepreneur Advisor will continuously look at the facts. What are the facts in business? For instance, one of the facts that I like to put out there is looking at the African gross domestic product. The GDP in Africa is recorded by specific industries, specific researchers always have different figures. Depending on whose figures you're looking at, the CIA website, World Bank or IMF, normally they put Africa's gross domestic product, which is the GDP, at between $2.9 to $3.4 trillion. I disagree with that figure because the purchasing power parity for Africa gives a more realistic figure of $6.6 trillion. And purchasing power parity simply means it is the figure that you take into consideration the cost of living in Africa vis-a-vis the cost of living in the developed world like the United States or Europe. If I was in Lagos or in Johannesburg or in Maputo or in Rwanda, it's not gonna cost me $20 to have a breakfast meal. It will cost me $10 to $20 to have a breakfast meal in New York. But in Maputo, it's not gonna cost me $20. The difference in the cost of living to buy a pair of jeans in Lagos or Abuja, or to buy a pair of jeans in Cairo, and to buy that same pair of jeans in New York or London, to spend money on a taxi cab, to have a meal, that difference is called the purchasing power parity. And if you use that index to calculate Africa's GDP, you're looking at 6.6 trillion, which tells you clearly that the opportunities in Africa are much larger than they are being tabled to be, that most institutions have presented them. So we'll look at that. We'll look at the United States again. We'll look at South America and Europe as far as the facts are concerned. Then we're going to give you the keys to 2020 as you listen. I'm not going to tell you which of the podcasts or which of the episodes is going to give you these keys, but we're going to be dropping the keys from time to time. What are the keys I'm talking about? Who is hiring? Which industries are hiring? Which companies are hiring? In which parts of the world are they hiring? We're living in a global market, folks. So if you're looking for a job, your job labor should be mobile across the world. So we'll look at the entire world, look at the entire globe, and figure out who is hiring in your industry. We'll look at who is educating. Where are the scholarships? Where are the support for education across the world? So that you can decide and decision and position yourself to take advantage of what is out there. We will also look at who is invested. These are keys to 2020. If you're starting up a new business or you have an existing business, you're always going to need capital. You will want to know who is investing across the world and why are they investing, so that when you are making your pitch to them, you know what to say. And then we're going to talk about who's giving money away, the philanthropic world, who is just giving it away. And those who are giving it away, obviously, for those in the non-profit segments, for those in the non-governmental organizations, you're going to want to listen to that. And then finally, we're going to talk about factors that affect global business, global capital, and global markets. For instance, the political environment is a huge factor that affects global business. Anybody who's been watching the news over the last few days will see that Iran and the United States were on the brink of war just a few days ago. And that brink of war was able to affect certain prices in certain markets, especially the oil price. So political environment tends to affect global business. It also affects global capital, because if that crisis had proceeded, then investors will start drawing back and start making more strategic investments. If you notice, the price of gold rose in the last few days. Why did the price of gold rise? Because investors see gold as a safe bet, safe place to put money during times of crisis. So they were pulling out money from stocks and bonds, putting money into gold. These are factors that affect global business and global capital, and even global markets. Another factor is climate change. You can see, again, if you've been watching the news, you see that Australia has been going through some of the worst wildfires, forest fires it has ever experienced. And they have agreed, some of the experts anyway, that those wildfires are caused by climate change. So the climate is changing, things are happening, and it's affecting the business environment. Hundreds of people have lost their homes, some people have lost their lives, and it is changing the entire landscape of the Australian economy. One major factor affecting global business, global capital, and global markets is technology. So we have to look at technology in a more detailed perspective as far as it being a factor that affects global business. The Entrepreneur Advisor is going to change your mindset. It's going to change your business. It's going to change your look on the world. I want you to join us every week. Listen, download our material, analyze what we're saying. We have put it in the best format for you as a businessman or a businesswoman or an entrepreneur. You can understand it, you can assimilate it, and you can use it to reposition yourself and your business. To engage with me directly, you can follow me at Nicky Okoye on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. At Nicky Okoye, NICKY Okoye. Thank you for listening and have a great 2020. I look forward to seeing you next week.